My wife and I each gained a system by chance. One was the ice system, the other was the heat melt system. My wife smiled and chose the ice system, and I took the heat melt system. Besides heating up meals a bit faster, it seemed pretty useless. Just 1 week later, global flood apocalypse hit. Countless people lost their lives in the rain and hail. Cities were swept away and food became scarce. My heat melt system suddenly became incredibly useful. It could raise the temperature of the whole building, dry clothes and evaporate water, greatly reducing casualties. Word about my system spread. National leaders urgently contacted me, hoping my unique ability could save the nation from disaster. Soon I became a national hero. But I never imagined my wife's jealousy would lead her to knock me out after the flood ended. Even my beloved son spat at me and said, "You're not my dad, Uncle Zhao is my real dad." In my final moments before being pushed, I realized I'd been cheated on for over 10 years. Watching the three of them happy together, I was filled with hatred and regret. Then I was reborn 1 week before the flood. Now Ellie and I were sitting on the couch, choosing between the two systems. But this time, she grabbed the heat melt system first. I knew instantly he must have come back too. Watching her choose the heat melt system, a cold smile touched my lips. The heat melt system seems great in the apocalypse, but it burns through your lifespan. Every time you use it, feel your insides burning. Being a hero isn't easy, thought to myself coldly, and chose the ice system. Not only does it make me immune to cold, I can walk on water like in a fantasy novel, and control water, turning it into ice arrows and blades. Seeing me pick the ice system so quickly, a flicker of doubt crossed Ellie's eyes, but it was soon replaced by joy over having the heat melt system. The next few days were tense at home. Ellie went on a crazy shopping spree. We spent most of our savings, bringing home boxes of supplies. But what she bought most were things like kerosene and charcoal, a ton of windproof lighters, and an inflatable raft. Food was all survival rations and canned meat. She even vacuum sealed everything. I wasn't idle either. I made trips to wholesale markets and water stations. Ellie saw me bring home giant blue water barrels, cases of bottled water, water purification tablets, and a manual pump. She knew what I was doing, but deep down she didn't want me too strong. She said sarcastically, "Joseph, why buy so much water? Are you crazy? When the storm hits in a few days, won't there be plenty of water?" I said, "We still need drinking water, and your heat melt system can boil it. It's safer, right?" She thought and saw some logic in that and stopped bothering me. David chimed in, "Yeah, Dad, you're so dumb. Mom says burnable stuff will be valuable." I ignored the kid. They'd come begging to me soon enough. I quietly set up the barrels in the study and balcony. When no one was home, I practiced with my ice system. I also remembered from my past life, the man Ellie cheated with was Zhao Dekai, security guard in our neighborhood's office, who later failed in business but was a smooth talker. I watched his post for half a day, finally seeing him swagger over for his shift, in his 40s, a bit pudgy, with a slick back hairstyle. I watched him from across the street. I tried using my ice energy to control a trace of moisture no human could detect, slowly pushing it into Zhao Dekai's head. A system prompt sounded, "Tracking mark complete. Effective range about 5 kilometers. Can be erased by extreme heat or energy impact." I smiled coldly. "Enjoy your final days, Zhao Dekai. Your good times are almost over." Watching him boast to his co-workers, I turned and left. On the final night of the countdown, Ellie, David, and I sat on the couch, watching emergency news reports. Rainfall in some areas was getting out of control. Announcing a century flood, urged citizens to prepare. Wind howled outside like ghosts. Ellie had a pile of charcoal in front of her. She looked nervous. David clung to her side. I sat alone in a single chair, holding a cup of hot water. At midnight, a roar sounded outside. The wind suddenly intensified. Raindrops began hammering against the window, louder and louder. It was hard to tell rain from hail. The ceiling lights swayed, flickering, then crashed to the floor and went dark. David screamed sharply. Ellie hurried to heat the charcoal. I smirked coldly. "You're cold, it'll make you colder." Quietly used my ice system, turning moisture on the windows and walls to ice. Frost spread across them. The pathetic pile of charcoal seemed weak against the cold, like it might die out any second. Even as Ellie fed it flames, it barely stayed alive. Why is this happening? Veins stood out on Ellie's forehead. The cost of keeping the flame going, I knew too well. In the early days of my past life, I struggled through the same thing. But back then Ellie didn't have the ice system working against her, so it wasn't as hard for me as it is for her now. I stood up slowly. Freezing wind that would kill others felt like a gentle breeze to me, not uncomfortable at all. Instead, it made the ice energy inside me more active. Every cell in my body seemed to breathe in the energy from the apocalyptic flood. I took a comfortable breath of the damp air. Ellie glanced at me, annoyed. She knew I wasn't cold and feared no water, just like when she had the ice system before. This environment was perfect for me now. I looked at her struggling, keep that weak flame alive, at her pale face and shivering body, and thought sarcastically, with skills like that, you think you can be a savior? Dying by your hand last time was such a joke. I looked out the window. With my ice system's power, the thick glass suddenly cracked.